on board at all. Great. I think we're good. Do you want to go ahead and get started, and then we can? Sure.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome. Tonight we are writing with confidence and responsibility. Writing with confidence because Vanessa Gebbe is here. Writing with responsibility because MJ White is here. I'll introduce Vanessa properly in a short while. MJ White, Martin White probably doesn't need very much by way of an introduction. He's a familiar face amongst us, friend amongst us. He's also making a return to the Hampshire Writers Society. In 2022, he very kindly came to talk about his debut novel, Phase, City of Addicts. Tonight we have an opportunity to catch up with what he's been doing since then and his upcoming publication plans. Next month, in fact, sees the publication of his latest work, Present, Past, Future and the Weird. Hopefully we'll hear more about that shortly. The main topic of Martin's talk is his newly launched research into albinism in modern and contemporary fiction. This is part of his ongoing doctoral project at the University of Winchester. A warm welcome, please, for MJ White. Get your stick for that back, Kevin.
Give it a try. You working?
Working. Okay, thank you for having me. First of all, I just want to, on behalf of the community and the albinism community, a lot of people refer to people with albinism as albinos. It is now standard amongst the community to be referred to as persons with albinism. Albinism is a condition, and it's kind of like saying, hey, you there with diabetes. You know, you don't say that. So, for the purpose of this talk, I'll refer to them as persons with albinism. So, first of all, my PhD is in two parts. First part is obviously research. The second part is a novel. The novel I aim to portray a character with albinism in a positive and, most importantly, an accurate light to you. So here's some familiar literature that you might be aware of. So obviously, Moby Dick, just described as an albino whale. A kind of a metaphor for God or even the devil. I'm going to skip over that one. Jermaine Green, you might be aware of the villainous vicar and murderer, who is also described as an albino. Cold Mountain, we have Boss, who interestingly in the book is not just described as an albino, but in the film he is. So there's quite a change in that setup. In Court McCarthy's Blood Meridian, Judge Holden is a paedophile. He is also a masochist and a metaphor for how the West was truly won. Obviously, Midwich Cuckoos, which famously adapted to a village of Dam with children, again, portrayed as albinism. So albinism come back into the light in 2012 when the Da Vinci Code was released, and especially when it was adapted to the big screen. There was a big outcry amongst the albinism community, mainly because the antagonist, Silas, the evil monk. Why he's portrayed inaccurately is because most people with albinism are blind and registered as blind. Silas is a gun-tooting, car-driving assassin, which is completely unrealistic, and also derogative to people with albinism. So, what is albinism? It can affect anyone. It's a hereditary disorder. If you carry the J gene and your partner carries the J gene, there's potential your child will have albinism. In the Western world, it affects 1 in 20,000 people. In parts of Africa, it can affect between 1 in 1,000 to 1 in 2,000 people. So it's caused by pigment and lack of melanin in the skin. The lack of melanin in skin tissue leads to premature death. It's estimated that in Africa, 3 to 5 people die from skin cancer every 6 months. Only 2% of people live past 40. It's quite a startling statistic. Mainly, that happens obviously because sunscreen is not available to tribal communities. But literally last month, the World Health Organization have made it an essential medicine now. So that's really good news. So, familiar faces on screen. That's Boris from Cold Mountain. Anyone recognise that guy? No? That's the torturer in The Princess Bride. We also have, Morlocks from The Time Machine. And Bill Moby Dick. Our children from The Village of the Dam. The twins in The Matrix. Griffin, probably the most famous of all evil albinos. The Invisible Man. And of course, our friend Silas. It's interesting with H.G. Wells, he seemed to have a fetish with albinism. Not only did we have the Invisible Man and the Morlocks, also in his Tales of Story, World to Come, I think it's called. Character in there was an evil albino, and his name was Whitey. So I don't know what H.G. Wells had against albinism. Oh, yeah. So my research, why I got involved in it. Firstly, I spent a lot of time in Kenya in the late teens, early 20s, and I first saw albinism in the Maasai tribes, which I never knew existed in human beings. I've seen it in rabbits, I've seen it in animals, I've never seen it in human beings. And I knew nothing about it. And then obviously the Da Vinci Code comes to the big screen, and it's put back on my sort of record, is called that word. So it was during my masters a couple of years ago at university, we had to write about a marginalised minority, and I recalled my time in Kenya, so I decided to start researching albinism. So some of the earliest documents, some suggest Andromeda's whiteness, she's a white Ethiopian queen, was a sign of albinism. Then others suggest it's more of a metaphor for essence of purity. Getting this thing, Noah and the Book of Enoch. Oh, lost it in the scribble. Really plain. So, Noah is described as having a body white as snow and locks of white woolly hair. When he opened his eyes, they lit up a room. Noah's father believed he was deceived through incestuous ways of his wife, but eventually born to him as his own son. Unfortunately, this is something that still happens in parts of Africa and Far East today, that people believe when their child was born with albinism was out of wedlock, and sometimes those children are murdered. whiteness and leprosy. So albinism was not recognised as a condition until 1909. And in ancient medieval times, those with the condition would have been untreated, and it would be skin cancer would have been untreated, and likely referred to as lepers. The Coptic apocalypse of Elijah, the false Messiah, or the Antichrist, is appeared before the second coming of Christ, and is described as having a tuft of white hair and leprosy-like characteristics. Furthermore, in the book of Romans, Miriam is punished with a violent skin disease that turns her white as snow and leprous. And the word albinism is derived from albinism, absence of pigments, stemming from the Latin albus, meaning white. The Greek derivative is alkos, meaning absence of pigment and white leprosy. With all this in mind, it's difficult to argue against my hypothesis that's associated diseases associated with albinism. So from the fall of Rome to the birth of the Gothic literature, there's very little evidence for writing about albinism. However, it suggests that the vampire, and therefore disease and contamination, is interesting when you consider pale skin, reddish eyes, a fear of sunlight, white hair, authors such as Bram Stoker could have been influenced by the condition and gave birth to the rise of the evil albino trope. So my research aims to raise awareness of the condition, to help prevent further misrepresentation, and to write a novel that hopefully will be printed in large print, braille and audio, so it's accessible to all with albinism, and portrays the character positively. So in doing so, I've engaged with the albinism community. I've been to several conferences now, and spoken to people, and as writers, this is what's really important. People say about doing research, getting to know the people you're depicting in your stories. So I went along with this idea that, people with albinism have red eyes. They don't. They have blue-grey eyes. They lack melanin in the iris, which when reflected in certain lights gives a red shine. Or because their skin is so thin, it makes their eyelids a pink tinge. So the red eyes is nice. Also, they cannot see rainfall. So there's tiny little details like that that hopefully will make my character really accurate. And obviously, they can't drive cars, which when they told me that, I was going, of course. Yeah. So these things, when you see a character of albinism in a story, he's driving a car or shooting a gun from 2 miles away. Right. So, mystical and symbolism. I touched on symbolism Moby Dick, and I also mentioned Judge Holden. We see mysticism in The Witcher and also the Eldrick Chronicles. So, in Africa, unfortunately, especially in Tanzania and parts of South Africa and Malawi, albinism is still very much demonised. The book Starchild doesn't help to, it doesn't help at all, because in this book, the character of albinism is mystical, magical, and actually is a star living amongst us. So, the next slide is actually quite disturbing. So, if you don't want to see it, I would suggest you look away just for a minute or two. This is why it is important that we depict characters accurately. So, picture on the left of to show you what skin cancer looks like when it's untreated, and how that should be seen in time before albinism was recognised as a condition. The other 2 pictures are from Tanzania. So, they have had their limbs removed for muti, which is witchcraft, magic. They believe the limbs of people with albinism can be put in fishing nets to catch fish. They use it as metal detectors to find rare minerals. And if writers continue to portray people with albinism as other, uncanny, magical, symbolic, this all kind of stuff happens. Now, you may say, oh, this only happens on the African continent. But what happens in our country, and you'll have this, for face value at the conferences I've been to, is there's people with albinism in this country are abused, called witches, and one sad story is Christina, who runs the Albinism Fellowship in the UK, no one would hold her hand in school. So when you write characters, bear in mind the real world consequences. In Malawi, there's troubling reports coming out now that sleep with a woman with albinism will cure you of AIDS. So my research is being supported and supported by the Albinism Fellowship UK and Ireland, under the same sun, which is based in Tanzania and Canada, and NOAA, which is based in the United States. So if you want to learn more about albinism, check out Albinism Mythbusters, Christina and Dr. J on YouTube. Dr. J is from Stanford University, and Christina, as I said, is a member of the Albinism Fellowship. There's some really cool videos of real fun. So that's it. That's me. Excuse me, I've got a terrible cold, so I've been really shy.
Well, we will be very friendly towards you. If there are further questions that you'd like to raise, or points, observations you'd like to raise with Martin, I'm in fact going to lead off and ask you to talk a little bit about the novel that you're writing in conjunction with all this.
Right, yes. So that is going to be an alternative history steampunk. It's set in a sort of a fictional Eastleigh, shall we say. And it's based around Eastleigh being a big sea town. It used to be in the 1800s, but it's actually called Sea Town. And the guy is the bad guy. Is obviously working for the Great British Empire, producing all these bullets, weapons and stuff. And there's a bit of there's a character in it. He's going to be his preacher. And there's one thing on that as well, going to conferences, people with albinism are actually really good at chess. So he's a very good chess player, and he uses chess as a way to trick bad guy and rescue a maiden in distress. So it's in the very early stages, it could all change, as you know, as well.
You referenced Gothic as a genre in your slideshow. From your description now, it sounds like this is why your interest in the weird comes to the fore.
Oh, with my short stories. So, short story collection, which was going to go out March, but it's probably been pushed back now till May, unfortunately. As these things happen, it's a big mixture of everything. It goes from the Gothic to the dystopian to the weird.
Right. And that's an overlap in the PhD novel.
There's probably some stories in there that I've taken a little bit of influence from the steampunk-esque and historical side of things.
Steampunk usually sounds a little bit weird.
Yeah.
Elliot, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. That was really interesting. And you mentioned at one point that people were worried about catching a boat with the vampire picture coming up and it made me reflect on this must fit into a much broader trait of physical, differences, scars, etc., bad skin as being something which is commonly associated in literature with baddies. And I know certainly going a long way back, a lot of people believe that how you wear on the outside is how you wear on the inside.
Yeah.
And it's really fascinating to see that
Yeah.
hundreds of years old, that as a sort of concept
That's
in
right,
literature.
And yeah, so disability
Yeah.
in general is very often used as a device by writers to portray bad characters. The character's disability been around since time in, it's probably,
And
although he wasn't bad, but he does die. So, sorry, spoiler. Which is very often what I've found so far. I'm reading 35 novels have characters of albinism, and so far, I think everyone I've read, character died. They don't have very happy.
Going back to where you can.
Yeah, you mentioned you have your creature character be very good at chess because that's a sort of thing within the community. Do you know why that appeals?
No one can explain. When I was, it was actually a father I was talking to, and he was talking about his son, and he was saying that because he obviously struggles with his eyesight at school, he's behind with everything, but he's already like England's top player at 10-year-olds at chess, and then this other guy comes and said, "Oh, I'm really good at chess as well." I was like, bizarre. So I don't know. There's no explanation I can give you on that one, I'm afraid. But if I find out, I will ask next time.
Indoors, you don't have to be in the sun to do it. It's close up. But,
Possibly, yes. Just, they obviously have to avoid sunlight as much as possible. Or maybe it's so easy they can see on their phones nowadays.
I just point out that chess doesn't happen on the board, but in people's head.
Yeah.
You know, some people play 5 or 6 moves ahead. That's not the board.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a good point.
Also, genes can do more than one thing. In the gene that's coding from heaven, but also coding for a brain function as well.
Yeah,
So there's something.
yeah.
Kind of hearing first, you know, coming to you. So
Yeah, so just had a couple of kind of perennial observations, which are going to try and be helpful. And then a quick question, right? So just thinking about other characters in literature which might have albinism and read fantasy is negative. I can also think of in Tolkien, the whites. So
Yeah.
which is spelled white as in
Yeah,
red,
yeah,
right?
and
But-
still white,
but-
yeah.
But the whites are also
Yeah.
portrayed as being white.
Yeah.
You know, the secular energy.
Yeah.
Water, that bit too. And then I was just going to say, so, but in nature, there is one area where I think having albinism isn't necessarily significant, which is sort of a bit of a bird watch.
Hmm.
So when we get a word albinism called leucistic, which I think is from the Greek for like leuco, and that seems a kind of a positive thing.
Yeah.
You know, people actually go out and try and when there's reports of a leucistic bird in there,
Yeah.
that actually attract people.
Yeah, as well, and that's pretty positive. But a lot of creatures around in the kingdom are often attacked by the albino
Yes.
squirrels.
Yeah.
They will shut and attack it and kick it out and stuff like
Well, my guess is that actually a leucistic bird isn't a spy bird.
No.
Stand there. Sorry, anyway, those were my observations. And just my question was that you said that you're interested in the subject, but instead of time when you were in Kenya, you saw some of the matter
that. Yeah.
with that condition. Can you tell us a little bit more about your time there, what it was particularly that sparked your interest in it? Is there any reason?
Oh, I was fortunate my brother worked at UNICEF, so he lived in Nairobi, so when I visited him on several occasions, we went out and that's on Monday. And like I say, I've never seen it before, and obviously albinism in a black community is really sad. And yeah, I was kind of fascinated because obviously the Maasai themselves are very tall people, they're very different looking, you know, the way they start roads and everything. And that's when I first, when I was in people, it was quite interesting. The Maasai actually care for them, they look after them and treat them like, you know, the same. But just across the border in Tanzania, it's the opposite. It's pretty interesting.
Let's go into the middle of the group. An observation and a question. Taking up that a steam multiplication we have often actually have lots of billowing white steam. Do you think you're using that colour motif in relation to the albino you reported?
No, but it sounds good, so.
My question is about the two characters with albinism in the story. Are you going to use anything about what you talked about in relation to their character? Is it going to be like used to show the problems they've suffered, or what they're trying to, or how they have to live their life?
Yeah. I'm trying really hard not to define the character with albinism, because this is something that I learned within the community as well, is that they just want a character who's normal. You know, he doesn't stand out, he's not heroic, he's not evil, he's not mystical, he's not magical, he's just a character in a book doing his part. So I'm really cautious about how I write him, and there are obviously subtle hints towards his albinism. I don't hammer it on the head, but it's so busy playing a game of chess at a park and he's got some umbrella over his head because sunburns his fair skin. So it's just subtle things there that will sort of let the reader know he has a condition.
These people have a different wiring of the visual system, like into the brain. And if you get a vision as good as it can be, then I don't think they ever develop a decent sense of depth perception, distance perception, because the wiring is wrong back in the brain. So it might be something you can put in your character that they can't do that.
Yeah, I'm not too sure about that. I'll have to do some research on that.
It explains why it's difficult to see rainfall.
Yeah, possibly, yeah.
Thank you very much. Sorry.
Sorry, yeah, in relation to, it seems quite geographical to some condition and stuff. Is there a relation you feel towards neurodiversity to a point of disability through history and geographical location, depending on temperature and stuff that seems to define more by culture from your research, then tends you to get a more positive character within your novel? Sorry, I'm trying not to be complicated, but I'm never person I can be, think things sound pretty simple and don't. With the condition, it seems like Maverick stands out more, so geographically in hot places, and it's that definition stuff, but also within what was said about limitations of disability to some point, sort of struggling with eyesight and stuff, and people saying that same condition, biological conditions and stuff. Is it seem to me like your character you're trying to be positive because of the way
Yeah.
simplicities of like mid-1800s and stuff and how things of people seeing disabilities.
Yeah.
If you're trying to bring that away from it.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. So, yeah, so it's but it's not hammering it home either. You know, it's you know, it's at the end of the day, I'm writing fiction. So, you know, I want it to be fun. I don't want it to be a lesson about disabilities. And that's what I'm writing, the critical element, that kind of stuff being there. But yeah, I think, you know, it's in this one night, it just needs to be around this study and discuss it, like, be accurate to it as much as possible.
Just a quick comment. I found it really, really interesting.
There's some.
I can absolutely see why it kind of piqued your interest, and but I started thinking about the bodyguard character in there, who is actually throughout the film who you think is the baddie because he's the albino one,
Oh, okay.
but actually he's not the baddie.
Oh.
But he's portrayed.
He's
like,
portrayed.
You interpret it.
You're almost assuming it.
Yeah, you're assuming it.
Yeah.
And that's interesting because is that driven by influence of films and books gone before?
Well, this is what I was saying about Cold Mountain. We assume both has albinism, but he actually, according to the book, he doesn't. So it's kind of like that. I must confess, I've never seen The Bodyguard.
Haven't you? Watch it.
This isn't going to be the last contribution.
It's kind of a two-parter note. Let's just remind you, there's a film, I think it's got Melissa McCarthy in it, I think it's called The Heat.
Yes.
And it has another character with albinism who is like on their side, but is constantly suspected of being a bad.
And he's constantly abused throughout the film, yes. It's
The tropes being identified.
Yeah.
And the other thing was just to say, when you have the Steampunk Eastleigh book done, please do tell us about it so we can do another one.
Certainly will, absolutely.
A few things to take away. about one's research. Hope you found it helpful.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Which round that, and we will in fact stop recording.
Oh, I thought that.
As per the request of our next speaker. The next Gabby is someone who is quite busy.